Hey everybody, this is Adam Duncan with the RVA Returners. Thanks for tuning in to another Deck Tech video. We're right in the heart of competitive Crystal Cup season. There's another one coming up very soon, and I won't be there unfortunately, but I'm going to talk about a list that I would highly consider running myself if I were going, and I'm joined by a special guest, Mr. Gregory Cole. Hey Greg.
Hey, what's up? Thanks for having me. I love being with the RVA Returners. Thank you.
Yeah, man, we love having you, and I had to kind of pull you in on this one because I'm running a list that I'm looking at the Scions list here. Scions of the Seventh Dawn. You've had a lot of success at some of our tournaments this season with this. I know it's a list you've been on before, so thanks for kind of jumping in here and walking through it with us. I've sent you this list, so let's look at it together. I'm going to start with the forwards. In my list, I'm running 24 forwards because Scions is pretty. The way I like to play it, it's pretty aggressive, and let's just jump in here and start with a couple of the low CP forwards. We've got Urianger. I'm running 3 of him. Now, when Urianger enters a field, choose a monster in your break zone. If its cost is equal to or less than the number of jobs Scion of the Seventh Dawn forwards you control, play it onto the field. I think a lot of Scion decks are going to always run at least 2 of this guy. He takes your hand and extends it a little bit into your break zone and gets monsters back. So I tested this list, my past locals, and it felt so good to be able to pitch Dragon, play Urianger, and just get Dragon back. I'm also looking at 1 Coral here, which is another card. In this list, when all of your forwards are Scion of the Seventh Dawn, Urianger is almost never bad to play. I like Dragon a lot. I've always liked that card since Opus 4. I like Coral because it puts so much weird pressure on your opponent to look across the field and be like, well, do I want to attack? Because his forward could just get 3,000 power in first strike. And then the same question they have to answer themselves, do I want to defend? Because it could just get big and I could lose my forward. So what do you think about Urianger? What do you think about this monster package? Or what are some other options you've seen people run with Scions?
Okay, so Urianger is easily, in our meta right now, Opus 8 and Opus 7 is easily one of the best Scions in the game due to the fact that Dragon and any of the monsters that a Scion player will choose will completely answer the meta. So any 4-drop or less, any monster, I'm talking anything from Deathgaze to Cactar, from all the way to Calbrenna. So these are all cards that you will see at every tournament, at every Crystal Cup, at any major event, any local event. You'll see these cards. So what's amazing is that Urianger is a 2-drop. ETB, you get something from the break zone depending on how many Scions you have. So I agree with the number that you chose. It is 3 is excellent because you need consistency. You'll have games if you run 2 Urianger that you only draw 2, or you won't draw any, and all of them will be at the bottom of your deck, which will be a really big problem when you rely on Urianger to deal with all of your monster issues and some of the most hardest forwards to deal with in the game. So definitely agree with Urianger. Is just another component of the Scion deck that makes it cohesive with every forward being some form of removal combined with an attacker or a blocker.
Yeah, definitely. And you're spot on with Dragon. I forgot Deathgaze, which is a card that's positioned so interestingly at 3 CP. A lot of popular monster removal doesn't hit him, and Dragon just doesn't care about that. He's like, I'm going to eat Deathgaze. I'm going to eat most of the problem forwards. And the cool thing about Urianger is that if this is a very heavy meta with Veritas of the Dark. When you play Urianger, you're fine sacrificing him to that or to a Fenrir because he's gotten value for you. And, anything you get out of him beyond recurring that monster is just bonus. But let's move on. Let's not talk too much about him, even though we could keep talking about him. The next one on the list here is Ida. And, this is... I think you could argue this is probably one of the best 2 CP forwards in the entire game. And I'm going to go over her text as well as a companion card. So for each job Scion of the Seventh Dawn, other than Ida you control, Ida gains 2,000 power. So unlike Urianger, she cares about your backups, she cares about your forwards. So she's counting pretty much everything you're going to play onto the field because, spoiler alert, the majority of this deck is job Scion of the Seventh Dawn. And then when she attacks, you choose a dull forward opponent controls, deal damage equal to half of Ida's power. You round down to the nearest 100. And adding into that is Papalimo, who is a 3 CP forward, EX burst, and when he enters the field, you get to search for a card named Ida. He also says if Ida deals damage to a forward, increase it by 2,000 instead. What's crazy about Ida, and this is to me why this deck works so well and why you can buy this starter deck out of the box and just kind of feel like it's almost ready to compete, she gets so freaking big without really any heartburn at all. And a lot of times what I'm doing when I'm playing this list, I'm looking for backup Minfilia in my opening hand, pitch something, go get Papalimo, next turn, play Papalimo, get Ida, maybe play it that turn, and I'm feeling pretty good about that. It just feels so efficient. There are so few decks that feel like they click so well. Honestly, when you're there and looking at the rest of these backups too, if you can play Ida early, is that something you do, or do you kind of set your board up better so that you play that Ida and it's like a really high powered forward?
I would say for this video that you always want any new Scion players or current Scion players, that you always want to focus on your backup line first. You want to build up as much as possible, and you want to curve out correctly, because Alisei does get discounted when you have Alpha Not on the field. There's multiple lines of play for the backups, but as far as Ida goes, she is an absolute threat. Like one of the biggest threats in the game, because she doesn't get reduced by Diabolos. So if you Diabolos her at a 10K, she's going to become a 9K. And this is a consistent issue because people don't realize that it only lowers her base power and it doesn't affect her entire power. So that's a great thing about her. Also, when you play her, you could play her on the snapback. So say you're playing against a mono lightning player, or you're playing against mono water, right? They have a dull Hildebrand, or they have a dull Viking, or they have a dull Layla. They swung out, you let them swing out, that's great, because now not only do you get to deal damage, but you also get to kill one of their forwards in the process. So Ida is one of those forwards where you let your opponent think that they're in control of the game because they have early damage on you or they have early swing on you. But it's actually the opposite. You get control of the game as soon as they attack, and people don't really realize that about Scions, is that it's one of the strongest snapback decks in the game.
Yeah, we should probably talk about Alisei right now. And because I did make a mistake of playing in my locals and kind of just rushing an Ida out. I had an early Alisei, which this card, it almost feels like it should be a forward. I mean, because of how aggressive this backup is. It's 4 CP. If you control Alpha No, it costs 3 CP. It's reduced by 1. And it gives the job signs the 7th Dawn haste. So, it is such an important part of this list. And if there are so few backups in the game for 4 CP that basically don't do anything the turn you play them. 4 CP, if it's not drawing you a card, or if it's not tutoring something, it kind of feels bad, except for Alisei. You play that opening hand, if that's in your hand, and if you have it and you can play it, I slam it down without a second thought, and I feel great about it. And that's where Ida starts to get really crazy, because then for 2 CP, you can draw her off the top of your deck, play her, and then attack with something big and possibly even removing one of your opponent's forwards, like you've said, because they got aggressive and they got some early points of damage into you. I really like that I took your backup list straight up. It's just 15 backups, which is fine, because you've got a backup in here that's searching out other ones. So Louisoix feels really good in this list. Let me ask you a question. If you have Alisei, or if you do not have Alisei in hand, and you're playing Louisoix, do you get Alpha No or do you get Alisei?
Oh, you go Louisoix to Alisei every single time. Yeah, every time you do that.
I'm not really I don't have the reps with this list that you do, that many people do, but Alisei is just, it feels so good. The list is still strong if you can't find her, but oh my gosh, when you play that backup down, the earlier the better. So I agree with you wholeheartedly. You want to tutor her up instantly.
The only issue where you won't get Alisei is if you're playing against mono ice or a discard deck, because then you'll know that they're gonna, after you get your Alisei and you don't play it, that they're gonna find a way to get rid of it, whether they make you discard or whether they play Hero Zidane. So basically, you would search for a card that you could play, or if you were really concerned, which is not really, maybe 1% of the time, if you're really concerned, you just play Louisoix and you don't search. That's also another option, but you really don't have to do that 99% of the time. It's either it's either the sister or the brother.
Gotcha. So I'm going to keep moving down our forwards here, and the next one, I'm going to skip over a couple that aren't Scions. I'm going to look at Thancred from Opus 5. He is what you'd call on-curve 4CP, 8K, if you control a job Scion of the 7th Dawn. Other than Thancred gains 1,000 power. Easiest condition to ever turn on in this entire game. And if he receives damage while dull, the damage is reduced by 2,000 instead. So there's a couple other versions of Thancred. I really like this one. I like running 3 of him because he's such a freaking beater, and he's so easy to come down as a 9K, sometimes with haste. And then they've got to deal 11,000 damage to it when it's attacking if they want to get rid of it. So for a list that I like to play aggressively, he is just like a really great top-end card. And I'm pretty sure you play him too, so tell me your thoughts. Did I do this card justice, or am I missing something else?
You know what? It's something about the Scions of the 7th Dawn. Each one of them is extremely special. Each one of them has some sort of defense capability, has some sort of aggro ability, attack ability, recursion ability. Like, I don't know what the heck they're thinking when they're making some of these cards, because they're just so beautiful. And you know, it gets a lot of flack for having a lot of similar names. Like, a lot of people say, you know, Scions, there's only like 5 or 6 of them and they're all unique, you know, like that's a problem. And that might be true. That might be completely true. But as far as Thancred goes, okay, this dude has some insane combat tricks. You combo Thancred with Rama, Opus 6 Rama with the Dull.
Yeah.
He's automatically, even if you Hecaton him with a 10K, even when you try to do something to him without him being able to get his dull ability, he just becomes a complete combat trick for the deck. So it's like, I've had situations where somebody will Hecaton me as a 10K, and I will straight up Rama, 7K the target that's using Hecaton, dull the Thancred, I take reduced damage, and I also kill the person using Hecaton against me. So it's like, Thancred is just insane. It goes head-to-head with Camelot. It goes head-to-head with so many like 8K or above forwards that are meta that you're going to have to deal with, and you don't have to worry about losing him in exchange.
What's crazy about him is that the other versions of the card, I feel like you can still justify playing. We'll talk about that a little bit toward the end, though. The last one, we talked about some really ridiculous Scions here. We haven't even talked about the queen herself. 4CP Ishtola from Opus 6. She's got a really great clause here. Cannot be broken by opposing summons or abilities that don't deal damage. If you control 3 or more job Scion of the 7th Dawn, other than Ishtola, she gains Brave. And when she attacks, you choose a forward. If you control 5 or more job Scion of the 7th Dawn, other than Ishtola, deal at 8,000. So literally, like, I feel like this card, it's just like, hey, I recognize everything else that all the Scions want to do, and I'm gonna do it too. And I'm gonna be the one that like kind of like, this is the glue that this is what you're really, it's like the big payoff of playing your backups, getting Papolino and Ida down, and your opponent's strike, how do I get rid of this Ida? Maybe you've played Thancred, and they're like, that's a sticky forward, I don't know how to deal with it. And here comes Ishtola. She probably has haste. She's probably got Brave. She's shooting something for 8,000, and they can't even do something like a Bahamut and get rid of her. I mean, I was kind of shocked when this card came out, to be honest. So, you know, in my opinion, you're running a 3 of. You would probably run more if you could. Am I wrong here?
No, this card is incredible.
It's insane. It's insane. It's just the cherry on the top of the Scion sundae that you're eating here. So now I'm going to get into the non-Scion aspect of my forwards and my list. And this is something that, like, what's really neat about this deck is it's got an engine, but it's got an engine that's like 35 to 40 cards specific, whereas a lot of decks, like I play a lot of mono wind, you're really boxed into playing a majority of that deck. Like, there's 50 cards, maybe 55 in my opinion, that are real staples, and you get some room, maybe 10% of the deck you can wiggle with. You can really wiggle in a lot of different ways with Scions, and you can play it to great effect. So what I've added in my list here are the Warrior of Darkness package from Opus 8. I like 3 Alba because the card's kind of disgusting. She combos really well with Ida because you can just play her from your hand. She's going to enter in at least dull 1 forward. So she says, when Alba enters the field, choose as many forwards opponent controls as the job Warrior of Darkness you control, dull them. So that's what she reads, but they actually errated it due to a translation issue. You can choose up to as many Job Warrior of Darkness you control. So that matters because I do have some others in here, but that clause is also an EX burst. And so she, they're playing a good blocker or something like that, or at least a blocker, and they're like, I'm not going to let Ida blow it up, and you can just play Alba, and then that's a good Ida target, and that forward's going to be broken that turn. And if you control, your opponent controls 2 or more dull forwards, Alba gains haste and can't be chosen by summons or abilities. That part's just ridiculous. That's kind of like, that's enough for this card to be really good, but the fact that she enables herself is just kind of good, even more icing on the cake there. Now, have you played around with this interaction with Scions before? Is this a card you've tested around?
Yeah, it is very cohesive with Scions. And the reason why I say that is because I did test Jene at the Tampa Cup, the first Fire Cup for the Crystal Cups in North America. And Jene was a 3-of in my deck, and it was insane in the Veritas meta, and it was insane in the Mono Water meta, because they would swing with the Viking, and they had Layla on board. So I would play Jene, kill the Layla, and block with the Jene against a swinging Viking. I kill 2 forwards and I get to keep a forward. So Jene was incredible, and it's an FFL card, so it gets backed by Diana.
Yeah.
And then also Alba is also incredible with the new errata. In Florida, she didn't have that fix yet. Everybody thought that it was a requirement for her to only choose up to as many Warriors of Darkness you control. Yeah. So now that the errata has been changed, things can get a lot easier for someone to just go in and dull, which is very similar to what the 3-drop Thancred does.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think she's because we like the big Thancred, she's an inclusion for me at 3. I'm running the 2 Diana to get Alba back. I'm also running 2 Jene because I like the way you described it. It's just so conditionally good. You know what? Sometimes that card might not be what you need in the matchup, but when you are looking for it, that's a blowout card right there. Back attacking first strike.
Yes.
Plus, I mean, you're talking about a deck that can deal with your opponent's forwards really efficiently, either by moving them out of the way like Alba, or just by blowing them up like Ishtola and Ida. So I'm playing a Jene on your turn, and maybe taking out one of your blockers, and functionally that card's coming in with haste as far as I'm concerned, because you're going to pass the turn, and I paid on your turn, so I get an upkeep with it, and I get to attack. And I like it as an aggressive card, but I like the way you phrased it at the beginning of our chat here. It's another good clapback card. It's just a way to say, like, hey, yeah, keep playing your stuff. Don't worry about me, but you're eventually going to have to really worry about me. I'm going to come in hard. So that rounds out the forwards in the list here. Let's move on to a couple of the summons. We mentioned Opus 6 Ramu, which is just such a toolbox card. Love everything this card does. I used to play a lot of 3-color monsters. My locals got really tired of it around Opus 4 and Opus 5, and I just kept telling everyone, all they got to do is print 1 card that has monster interaction, and this deck's not going to work anymore. And then they printed Ramu, and I was right, because this is a good card for getting rid of monsters if a deck is trying to rely on them as a win condition. And it's just, you get to do 2 things. You get to get one of your lightning forwards. If it doesn't already have haste, you can make it, give it haste. You can blow something up with 7,000. I'd imagine a lot of times what you're doing with this card is you're dulling something before you attack with Ida. I have it as a 3-of. I could go down to a 2-of. Where are you on this card? Is it one that you're running a lot of?
Yeah, it's a 3-of for sure. If you're running 2, that's a greedy slot because you need to see the card. It's a win condition. Yeah. It's something that you use after Dataluma pings himself, and you get to break the Cactar and kill the Dataluma after it's taken 1,000 damage. Yeah. So it's like it kills Layak. This card is so insane. It was ahead of its time when it came out, and a lot of probably some of the best players that used it were quiet about it because it's just a rare Rama. Rama has never been so significant in the game until this card came out, and so it started doing work, and sure enough, it survived the test of the time as a 3-of in any Scion or Mono Lightning deck up until Opus 8 right now. And I really don't see that changing just because the mods on it are incredibly relevant.
I agree with you. It just gives you too many things to do. Another Ramu we've got here is one that I really slept on. I didn't really get excited about the Opus 7 Ramu. I just didn't really think it was that great, but you got to think about what forwards are in the meta right now. This is 4 CP EX choose a forward, it loses 7,000 power, and if it results from an EX burst, it loses 8,000 power instead. So, I mean, this card probably never feels bad, and it gets around so many things, and I like that it gives a dimension to the deck where it's not just trying to remove things by dealing damage, it's also got an option to remove it by, losing power. That can really matter in a lot of interactions. I like running 3. If you hit it off EX burst, chances are it's just going to remove a forward that's on curve as well. So what are your thoughts here? Are you running this card, or are you running how many?
Yeah, this is a 3 of in any Scion or probably Mono Lightning deck because, first of all, the burst is insane, and it usually wins game off burst. Like, if you see this in burst against your opponent, they pretty much lose at that point. It's kind of like how Odin used to be. And then now it reduces power at a 7 threshold. So off burst it's 8, right? But at 8 kills pretty much everything. Right. But on 7 is super relevant because you're getting around Y'shtola and you're getting around Noctis. So Noctis can't pay to save itself because you're reducing power, you're not dealing damage. Exactly. And then for Y'shtola, it just puts it into the break zone because it's putting its power to 0. Even though it can't take damage, its power can be reduced.
Yeah, that's the only problem with the Wind Y'shtola. She can't save herself. You can cancel that summon if you want, but Y'shtola's still going to the break zone. So those are probably the 2 best targets you can imagine for that. But what's great is it's an EX burst. I've always felt like cards that say EX just forgive you for running extra copies. So there's no reason not to run 3, in my opinion, of that. And then we've already looked at all the backups just about, but we'll go through them in detail here. I don't think there's a lot to talk about because, like the rest of this deck, the lines, they paint themselves for you. You've got Alphino. His ability is not irrelevant. Choose an active forward, deal at 1,000. And spoiler alert, you're probably always dealing at 2,000. That's his clause. If you have a job sign of the 7th Dawn forward, deal at 2 instead. And we've got Kryle 14, which is a really cool card. Choose a forward you control during his turn. It can't be returned to his owner's hand by your opponent's summons or abilities. We haven't really seen those bounce effects be really prevalent in the meta, but that's just not something that you want to happen sometimes. And what's great about this Kryle is she doesn't require you to break the card. You just have to pay the 2 and dull her. A lot of backups with a similar effect kind of say no, but her effect is a little conditional. It's not they can't be targeted, it's just they can't be returned to your hand. And honestly, that's not a great play against Scions anyways, because a lot of times you just have the card we talked about earlier, Alice, and if you bounce something back to my hand, I'm just going to play it next turn, and it's going to attack anyways. It's giving all my Scion forwards haste. Louisoix is really great, just because it gets to tutor up some of your best backups. And then we got Minfilia on an EX, and you get to search for a forward. A lot of times I'm thinking you're searching for Papalymo unless you just already have him out there. But what's great is she can find Y'shtola when you really need her. And she can find Urianger if you really just need to get that dragon to remove something again. And her ability feels like a game winner too. Just pay an earth, dull her, put her in the break zone, choose a forward and break it, only if you have 5 or more job sign on the 7th Dawn, which a lot of times in this deck you do. How do you feel about that? Did I miss anything there? Is that kind of a good summary of what we're looking at with the backups here?
Yeah, Minfilia basically says search for your win condition.
Yeah, I agree. It's pretty nuts. It's nuts that this whole package gives you that piece of insurance when you're like, it's so rare that you're just missing that last piece because you can find so much with it. There's one card that I accidentally skipped over from our summons here. I'm running 2 of this, but I've seen people run 3, and that's Opus 8 Fenrir. And he reads, if you cast Fenrir, you can pay an extra 2, choose a light forward or a dark forward, break it. If you paid the extra cost, we'll remove it from the game instead. Now, we all saw this card get printed in the spoiler season. We thought, hey, everyone's going to have a response to Yuri. But now that's not really that's not the only mode that Fenrir is really good on. As everyone who's really following the game knows, Veritas of the Dark is a big present card, and this is a great option to have here. But I know you have thoughts on Fenrir. What do you think about this card?
This card's busted. You break Cam for 2, you break Yuri for 2, you break Veritas for 2, Galdas for 2. If you don't want to lose anything, you just pay extra 2 more and you RFG it. You can even RFG Cam so that they don't use it again. It's just like, Why would you do this? And it's simple, because they knew that it was going to be a dark and Yuri centric meta. So they said, if we're gonna print these cards to be able to make people lose forwards and backups on outro with Veritas, and be able to have Cam search out for all these busted dark cards, and Yuri, doing what Yuri does, then we need to give people an answer to be able to deal with how oppressive these cards are. So you slot Fenrir, you'll never have that problem again. It's as simple as somebody playing Camelot in Earthwind on like Offstar Sybil, and you Fenrir them, the game's over. As soon as you Fenrir their Cam right after they play it Offstar Sybil, the game's over. They lost so much CP in that play.
Yeah, they traded a big forward and broke a backup that they at least paid 3 for, just to find maybe their chaos or something like that. And what's nutty about this card is that I've always felt Odin in Opus 1 kind of set the table, 4 CP, choose a forward, break it. Or choose a forward that costs 4 or less, break it. Like 4 CP to kind of target something 4 or less has been like the average rate to remove a forward. It's not necessarily the best, but what Fenrir is doing is he's saying 2 CP, any light or dark. Like just the stipulation of light or dark doesn't restrict this card to some unplayable situation, because there are so many good light and dark forwards, and most of them cost 4 CP or more. And then paying the extra 2, like you're very comfortable paying 4 CP to just straight up to get rid of something in the first place, but then you're removing it from the game altogether. So it's just an incredible card. It's one that, you're saying run 3. I'm running 2, but I think you've just talked me into 3. It doesn't seem like you ever, if you don't have any light or dark forwards in your matchup, then you just pitch the card for CP. It's not the end of the world. So that's my Scion package there. That's mine. You can run a lot of different ways with this. We used to see Amon in this deck a lot. I think Alba's kind of taken the place of Amon. You can go with Cecil, the Earth Cecil, and a lot of other things. You can really kind of customize. I'm not running any light or dark cards. That's fine. Like, let me be the one to give you permission. You don't have to do that. But that's maybe an opportunity to flex in an old school Opus 2 Emperor, or maybe your own Veritas of the Dark. There's a lot of really great ways to play this list. But let me say, one thing I've heard not a lot of people say, I think the smart people aren't saying this, but you can look at this list, and because there's so many starter cards, and because they all sort of fit together like a puzzle, you're like, this is the easy way. This is like the easy version of competitive meta. And I think that's a serious misconception. I took this to my locals, and I went 2-2. We've got a tough locals, but you can't just sleeve these cards up any which way you want it, and it's just gonna like play itself for you. The lines are still pretty tight, and it's matched up really good. But it's not a skill-less deck. You have to know what you're doing, and you have to know lines, and have the instincts like Greg was talking about with Ramu on your Thancred in the middle of combat and blowing your opponent out. So, Greg, what do you think this deck loses to? Like, what's a bad matchup?
The thing is that every deck in the game will lose to variance. And so you could say that you don't draw any backups. It's a 15 backup deck, right? Luckily, when I played in Portland, I did not brick. The whole tournament, the deck ran hot. So I did not brick the deck on 15 backups, and so it ran really, really well all the way into top 8. So I look at the situation, I say, okay, what are some of the issues that people are gonna deal with? You're gonna run into pilots that are better. You're gonna run into people that top deck better than you. You're gonna run into bad draws, or you're gonna draw your dark cards, or so on and so forth. So you have to be very, very comfortable with deck. Just as you mentioned, you have to be able to play test it. You have to be able to know your lines just like any other deck. So we just want everybody to know, going into the situation, if you're going to try this deck out, please do your reps with it before you take it to your locals or before you take it at an event, because we don't want you to feel horrible about playing it and saying, we heard a lot of good things, but it didn't, come out that way, because it does take practice.
And that's the thing. I mean, this is a guy who's who has top 4 and top 8, multiple Crystal Cups this season, playing a similar build, but not a cakewalk, not for free, and it's still a really demanding deck. If you're going to a Crystal Cup, my number one advice for you is play what you know and play what's comfortable, because it's a long day. It's a tight. Those tournaments are really hard, and everyone goes to win. So everybody's gonna be bringing their best stuff, and if you're just looking for like the easy win and you're gonna sleeve this up, I think that's a fool's errand there. But it's still a really fun list, and it's pretty approachable. Oh man, I totally skipped over Wall as well. We didn't talk about Wall this whole time, but I don't know if there's anything left to talk about Wall. Opus 5 Wall. I mean, he's just good in this deck. I'm running 2 of them, and is he one that you play with your Scions?
Yeah, definitely. So it can turn the Scion control or aggro deck into like kind of like a control deck, because what you're going to do is you're going to use Wool to give an extra ping 3k to the dull forwards with Ida to finish off. So if Ida's like really short of killing something huge like a Sephiroth or something, basically Wool's going to come in and add the excess damage that you needed in case Papalimo's missing, or just because you want to kill a Viking, or if you want to kill a Layla, you want to see a Wool versus most cards in the deck, because you want to use its enter the attack phase ability to be able to counter or add to the deck's way of being able to return damage, or to answer back all of the damage you just took or the plays that you just took.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, most people are slamming a Wall and they're just saying Brave, no EX every single time, but this is a deck
Right.
This deck can really take advantage of every single mode that he offers. You can buff Ida up to get an extra 1k. You can deal the 3k more. I mean, it kind of has a great home here, and I think we're going to see this deck continue and stay relevant into the next seasons. I think the only card that I think is a really great counter for this card is Halocronassus, and a lot of decks that are running Halocronassus are really only running 1 copy. So if I'm playing this and I'm running it well, and my opponent drops Hallie and can deal with my board, kudos to them. They kind of put the 1 card in at the right time. But other than that, I think it's really well positioned. Congratulations to you, sir, for all the success you've had in this season so far playing with it. And we're rooting for you to get further down the line with it as well. Any closing thoughts?
Closing thoughts. I just want to say thank you, Adam, so much. It was an honor to be here. I really love the RVA returners. I'm actually wearing my RVA returner shirt right now because I thought we were going to do like video interview. I wasn't sure.
No, I got you covered too. I got mine on as well. That's nice.
Yeah. So, I wanted to show respect because you guys are absolutely killing it out there. I listened to your show this morning, actually, and also yesterday before and after Game of Thrones. So I really love everything you guys are doing. You guys have some of the warmest people in the community that are in your team and also in your local area and your greater area. So, everybody has a lot of respect for you guys. I have a lot of respect for you guys. I can't wait to come and visit and just hang out. I'm probably going to get destroyed, but I just want to come out and hang out with you guys because I really, really do love your community and everything that you guys do for the game. Thank you very much for all the hard work that you guys do for everybody, from streaming to podcasts, to just connecting with the community and making videos like these where players can potentially find something that can, make something very competitive for them to be able to go into the competitive field.
Oh, man, thank you so much for that. Kind words from the kindest man in the scene. Love having you, man. I hope we can do this again, and thanks everyone for watching and tuning in. I hope that this has been informative and interesting. And good luck if this is one that you bring to a Crystal Cup. I'd love to see kind of your take on where you're putting your cards and what you're sleeving up in the 50. As always, thanks for watching, and we'll see you again next time. Thanks again, Greg, for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me. It was an honor.